and welcome to Classical Schmassical, the anti-classical classical music podcast. Tune in every Saturday as we discuss, deconstruct, and dissect what it means to be a musician in the modern world. I'm your host, Alexa Laterno. I use any pronouns you like, and our guest this week is Meghan Doyle.
Hey, Alexa.
Hey.
Thanks so much for having me on today. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to chat for you, and honored that you've chosen to spend some time with me.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah. So my name is Meghan Doyle. We'll just say I use she/her pronouns because I've been ruminating over whether or not to use she/they just as a signifier of queerness, a signifier of masculinity or whatever. But
I get that.
Yeah, I mean it's like pronouns feel like this necessary evil that just none of them feel great, and
yeah.
I think she feels the least terrible.
Yeah, that's
it took me a
totally
while.
fair.
Yeah. It took me a while to finally add pronouns to my email signature because I was I just don't know where to put, and if I just put she, her, maybe if someone doesn't know me in real life, know what I look like, know the way I move through the world, they might just think that, oh, this person is like some regular old lady, which is so deeply wrong, right?
Yeah, sure.
But ultimately, I decided that putting pronouns at all was more important to the gay agenda, if you will,
sure,
than any uncertainty I was having behind the scenes. So I just put it in there and just whatever, tear off the Band-Aid.
I get that.
So yeah, music related stuff. I am a multi-instrumentalist. I'm primarily a guitarist, but I play drum set as well, bass, a little bit of keys. I, over the course of quarantine, acquired a lap steel and a P-bone.
Ooh.
And yeah, it's been really, really silly. And then my good friend Tim, who I know you know, my Christmas present from him was oh God, I don't even know what they call it. Yamaha made this instrument that's like a recorder with a reed mouthpiece.
Ooh. Oh wait, I think I've seen those. They're like saxo tube things.
It's like this little plastic white thing with a reed mouthpiece. It's so incredibly silly.
I love it.
And yeah, so we were playing Christmas carols on this silly little
my Christmas present to myself was an automaton, so I
that's
get it.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're so
that
good.
Is so awesome.
Well worth the investment.
Yeah. I had a friend in college who had one, and we got her a fish, and the fish died, and somebody played taps on the automaton for the procession to the toilet.
That's
to say goodbye to the
incredible.
fish. Oh, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, that feels like it really sets the mood.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. So as a guitarist, I've mentioned this before on the podcast. Guitar is absolutely very confusing to me, and I'm currently trying to write my first guitar piece ever, and I'm way in over my head. So
Congrats.
To start out, what are some things that non-guitarists get wrong when writing for guitar or trying to understand what it is?
So I'm sure everyone's had the experience, right, on any instrument where you sit down and someone puts a piece of music in front of you and you're like, oh my God, this person clearly had no idea how to play this instrument, right? So so it's definitely not the guitar is so scary and no one's ever going to understand it, because everyone on every instrument has probably encountered something that feels similar to that. Why my email is just not wanting to go away.
Fair.
The guitar, we're kind of confined by our open strings. That's sort of the thing about the guitar. And the guitar is mostly tuned in fourths. There's 1/3 in there in the middle. E, A, D, G, B, E. So between the G and B is a third. But everything else is fourths. So in terms of playing chords or stacked intervals, we can't always play stacked triads or stacked seconds. You can do a single second, but a cluster, things like that. It can happen in the right voicing in the right place on the instrument, but it's got to be specific. So there's a lot of instances where something like that'll show up, like a cluster of maybe little piece of like an add 9 chord that someone wanted to put high up on the instrument, but it's like, yeah, that's physically impossible to play or whatever. And then there are other things about the instrument where you can kind of really take advantage of what it has to offer. Again, going back to those open strings, incorporating those into chord voicings, even if it's not like the standard open chord shapes that everybody learns right down in like first, second, third position. You can take shapes up to, 5th fret, 12th fret, on and on, but leaving some of the open notes in there to capture parts of the chord can have a really beautiful kind of texture.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So like in a sort of a general, I know like the frets get smaller as you get higher, but like when you're kind of down at the bottom, what's sort of the general like hand span, would you say?
I've seen a stretch of like 1st to 5th.
Oh wow.
Which is it's something that like not everyone's going to be able to do. But I've seen like oh god, what chord? I think it's probably would be like an F major 7 chord where you're hitting the low F on the low E string, 1st fret, and then you're trying to get a bar on the 5th fret of the top 3 strings.
Oh
so
wow.
C, E, and A. That might have been in like I cannot remember where I saw this. It might have been in like a classical guitar piece where the traditional posture when we're playing classical guitar is a little different because the style of music just dives so much more deeply into those wider, farther apart voicings because you're trying to play a melody and a harmonic structure beneath it. But yeah, I mean, something big like that is definitely possible, but it's probably usually more like within like a 3 fret box, maybe 4.
Yeah, and like I know, like you were saying, with trying to combine the sort of chordal nature with the melody, I think that's the thing that I struggle with the most personally. Is like I think of the guitar as so much a chordal instrument, and then when you want to have it exist in this classical, whatever that means, but like I'm doing right now is a duet for guitar and violin. And I'm like, I have no problem thinking of the violin as a melodic instrument, but trying to like wrap my head around how to use the guitar has been like just mind blowing. Like the mental gymnastics I'm trying to get from like this chordal idea to something that can really be an important part of the music, not just an accompaniment, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so many, you can go to like, there's such a range of how much texture you can put into the chordal half of the guitar, whatever guitar part too. Like, I mean, you can just have like an open root and a melody happening, or like a low string, just one long tone and then a melody over that, or you can have a really intricate rhythmic piece and the melody's popping out of it somehow.
That's really interesting texture. I hadn't really thought about having just like the low, like almost sort of a drone kind of a quality. It's really, it makes sense now that I think about it, but like it's really intriguing to think about how that could be used really effectively.
Yeah, I don't think this is I've seen a lot of things like that in some of the beginner books that I used to start teaching students, and I don't think it's like a lesser compositional style or anything just because it's music for beginners. It provides plenty of context to make the melody speak. Yeah. But yeah, just a lot of like, particularly like A minor to E minor and back and forth or whatever. Like you just open A, a little melody, open E, a little melody. But yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, fun. Yeah. So to that end, can you give some examples of like repertoire that really gets the guitar as well as maybe some that doesn't quite meet that mark?
Yeah.
Not throwing anybody under the bus, of course.
No.
But yeah,
of course not. Of course not.
Not that anyone important would really take notice of this little podcast, but
you don't know, right? We'll keep it as mysterious as possible. But so yeah, I'll speak from a musical theater place for this because that's kind of where the bulk of my experience and passion and whatever lies. Yeah. And I've played a wide variety of books in my day, if you will. Sure. And some like really well written ones that I can remember would probably be, I'll say them first and then I'll dive deeper into each one. Spring Awakening is an awesome book.
Okay.
Lizzie the musical is not as well known, but it's really great, and the guitar books are really good. And Rent is just a classic.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's the reason why I am who I am today, that when that movie came out in high school, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Rent is a classic. But go back to Spring Awakening. This one, and I think it's not only the writing and the actual playing, but also like the way that I don't know if it was Duncan Sheik's idea or whoever like edited the page, the way that they physically put the music on the page, I think works so well because they'll actually give you like diagrams of shapes of like chords that just aren't in the standard like zeitgeist or whatever. The show itself is written to be played with 6 guitars.
Wow.
Which it seems like it could be overkill, and like if you're getting paid $50 to go play it at a high school or something, like I could be convinced to agree that it's overkill.
Sure.
I've done it with 5 because I've never owned a 12-string guitar, but it calls for an electric guitar in standard tuning, an electric guitar in dadgad tuning, which is D-A-D-G-A-D from the bottom up. Acoustic guitar in standard tuning, acoustic guitar in open C-Add 9 tuning.
Okay.
And a nylon and a 12-string. But so particularly on the songs that use those non-standard tunings, he, like, say there's like a bar, like Bitch of Living has this iconic dun-dun-ga with those crunchy guitar chords, and he'll give you like the shape of what your fingers should do for that bar, which is really helpful because that song is on electric guitar in dadgad capo 3. So it's like, if you have any idea of how the fingerboard works in standard tuning, none of that information is useful to you now because we've just changed every note. Right. But he's got these voicings that like sound great and fit in the hand well, and he'll give you the shape for it. So it's kind of like you don't have to do all of the mental gymnastics of figuring out how to make it work. It's a really well written show, easy to make sense of and play, besides the fact that you have to switch between 6 guitars number to number. But yeah, it's a good one. Lizzie is a great show, and the guitar parts it's a heavy metal show.
Oh, cool.
So there's 2 guitar books, and they're just really well written. Like it's like if you were listening to a heavy metal show, but you know, the best combination of heavy metal and musical theater, and like, you know, the higher art, if you will, that is musical theater. And then Rent is also just a really fantastically written guitar book. I mean, it's a guitar driven show, and the parts make sense, and it's just good stuff. Yeah. If you want some examples of things that maybe don't work so well, 2 really, really great shows that the guitar book just kind of falls flat for me. Oh, there's a third one too, but we'll talk about the first 2. I love the show Footloose. I've played it like 6 times. It was the first show I ever did, ever like as a guitarist, when I was a sophomore in high school. And yeah, there's instances where you're like, Footloose, it's a rock show. It's like classic rock, 80s rock, 2 guitar books. It's going to be like so fun. The guitar books are going to be so much fun. And then you get to an instance, the very end of the opening number, which has just been this like 10, 12 minute long like medley, right? Like a huge ensemble production number to open the show. You get to the very end, the final chorus, and guitar 1 is Tacit. And guitar 2 is just playing like high, it's in F sharp, and you're playing like F sharps and E sharps, right? Just going from do to T, depending on which one fits in the chord. And so every time I've done it, if I'm playing guitar 1, I play power chords. Like there's no music written, but I'm like, this is what needs to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
just
someone
one
who's
of those,
afraid
like,
to use the guitar, and you say, I'm not afraid to use the guitar.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what I'm thinking. Like, maybe this person wasn't super confident on the guitar, so they said, well, both keyboards are playing. There's enough texture here.
Sure.
No, you need some guitar power chords in this big moment.
Gotta.
Yeah. And then another one I was really bummed about. Right before the pandemic, we had just started rehearsals for a production of Little Shop. And I had never gotten to play it. I was really looking forward to playing it. And then I opened the guitar book, and it was like the same deal, right? Just like single like root notes when it could have been like a comping section. Which was just a bummer, because Little Shop is like this awesome like doo-wop thing, and I feel like lends itself so well to the guitar. Yeah. But just kind of didn't take advantage of the instrument. Yeah. So there are situations like that for sure.
Yeah. So it sounds like just like educate yourself and then like use it, and don't be afraid of it, because
exactly.
Yeah. And talk to players, of course. Always talk to players. Yeah.
And the thing that kind of blows my mind is these are shows that have like had full, very successful Broadway runs. And this is like it's almost baked into the musical theater culture, where you get a book and you know there's going to be like myriad editorial errors and like things that just don't make sense in the instrument. And I just don't understand why that's the culture. You know, it's like you have the money to find the right people to do this really, really well. And I'm not like trying to, I'm by no means criticizing like individual orchestrators or anything. Sure. But I don't quite get it sometimes.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I've definitely, I don't have a ton of experience playing musical theater, but some of the ones that I've played, I've been on flute and went, no, this isn't it. Or they'll throw too many instruments in one part. And like, I get why they do that with like the way that the financing works, but I'll still be like, I don't need to be trying to transpose in my head from an F-sharp tin whistle to a piccolo, because that's it. Yeah. It's just like there's a certain level to where you get certain, like, I don't know. I feel like the performer is not 100% always held in mind, and it can make it really challenging to do some of the things where like the show would be better served if you just took a little bit more time to understand it.
Right. And there's got to be like people who'd be happy to consult.
Oh, I'm sure. I think performers are, especially performers, not to be like, hey, will you play on my piece? But hey, can you look this over? I've never had any problem finding them for like any instrument that I've written for, even including like nickel harpa and like all Nagelgeige, which that's a weird one. I've been able to find people and say, hey, can you look this over? And then they do. So it's, yeah. I know, I think that's like, I say it a lot, like, oh, ask a performer. And I try and take my own advice as a composer, but performers are always happy to talk. I've never met a performer who wasn't happy to talk to me about new music.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, for sure. Talking is easy.
Yeah. Learning the part is, but.
Yeah, right. No, the talking part is totally easy.
the talking part's easy. That's why I have a podcast. It's the talking part. Yeah, exactly. I do lots of talking. It's great. Yeah, so, also another question I had, just sort of, that kind of popped into my mind, I am not super aware of what extended techniques or like non-standard kind of techniques you can use on guitar, and if you have any of those that are in mind that you think are cool, I would love to hear about them.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know if this is considered extended technique, but just off the top of my head, like cross stringing, or doing sort of like a like a line where maybe you're alternating from an open string to like a moving part. So I'm trying to think of like an example in a show or in anything, and I can't. Well, there's like working on Head Over Heels right now, which is like the Go-Go's jukebox musical, which
Fun.
Like has its quirks too. There's bits and pieces of that show that make no sense, but the guitar one part in Vacation, it has like a it's like an eighth note phrase where there's a moving line, but like there's an open E and B the whole time, and you're kind of doing this like moving melody in E major on the G string, more or less. I mean, it kind of moves around a little more in there too, but or just kind of like a or like a I working on a Carole King tribute show right now, and one of the solos in one of the tunes is a bit where it's eighth notes going back and forth. I think it's like high A on the E string, on the high E string, and then it's like A, E, A, D, A, C sharp, A, open B. So you're kind of holding that and like moving back and forth and doing those. So just like cross-stringing between the strings like that always can sort of like have a fun color.
That's cool,
And then harmonics too are fun to kind of play with. There are the natural harmonics, 12th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret, and incorporating some of those. Like I used to do like duo acoustic cover gigs with a singer friend of mine, and I feel like we'd always have songs in like jazz tunes in G or whatever, and I'm like ending on a G major 7 just because it has to be a G major 7,
right?
And like you can get like the 7th fret harmonic, is it F sharp and a B right there, and then hit the low G, and it's like this G major 7 vibe of the high harmonic sound and the fretted low, like bass note. Also like bends and things, bends, slides, like hammer-ons and pull-offs, all of that sort of articulation I find is what makes stuff sound really guitaristic, you know?
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. So yeah, also as a musician who like travels around the city a lot, what does your gear setup look like? Because like my gear setup right now is like one mic that I impulse bought because I needed a mic to do this podcast, and like tried to find something that would work well for spoken voice and playing, and then my little 2i2 interface, and I'm just like over here, and I'm like, this is my baby setup. So I'd love to hear what you know, being portable but also sounding good, and like how do you find that balance?
It's a challenging one, and it's like a totally different animal from you know, commuting out to a bar gig or something like that. And I feel like you see guys with like, I had an analog pedal board for the longest time, which is like, it's just, you know, big piece of wood with Velcro on it, and like a whole bunch of different distortion pedals and wah and volume and chorus and delay, all Velcro to it. And that can sound great, and you can really customize your sound, and it can be a wonderful thing, but no one's carrying that around Manhattan and onto a subway.
Right.
So yeah, the like conundrum of trying to find a multi-effects unit that sounds good, is functional, and is also like doesn't take up a lot of real estate is kind of challenging. I've found a couple that each still have their quirks. Like I have one, it's called the brand is like Mooer. It's a red truck. It like looks like a truck, and then there's a bunch of little different modules within it. And it's pretty decent, but like I'm not in love with the distortion module on there, and I really just like the chorus module, so I was contemplating getting like another very small chorus pedal. But it's nice because it does have individual switches for everything, so I can turn just reverb on, turn just reverb off, turn just distortion on, just distortion off. And so rather than having to build a preset, like program the show in order, if you will, rather than having to do that, you can just pick your patches on the fly and like build your sound on the fly from song to song. But I got another unit that my wife impulse bought, and I was like, why did you spend this money? We don't need this. And then of course, like the first gig I used it on, I'm like, oh wow, this thing's really nice. I'm so glad we have it. But it's like this little Boss unit, and it's got like 2 or 3 switches and a expression pedal, like that could be a wah or volume pedal. But really the functionality of it really is better used by like kind of programming your show in order, or having a set number of presets.
Okay.
The last show I used it for, I had like 5 presets or something built, and I didn't do them in order, so there were times where I had to like click forward 5 times to get to the patch that I really wish would have just instantaneously happened.
Yeah.
So it's some of this stuff too. It's just not only are you like learning the music and like making your notes, as far as, you know, as you're practicing, you're making notes of, I want to play this way, I want to play that way, but then you're also making notes of what effects you need and building the effects into the unit. So it's like a whole nother layer of practicing that for the guitar is specific. And I'm sure like, and for like main stage on the keyboard, like if you don't do that extra work programming, you could practice until your hands bleed, and like you're just not gonna, it's just not gonna sound good.
Right.
Because that it adds so much to have the effects really just dialed in correctly.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I've just sort of started working in like Max for my own compositions and things, and like getting patches built that are intuitive to use and work well is like the biggest balancing act for me, because I feel like I can code some cool stuff and then I go, and now I can't play this because I don't have a hand free at this time to like switch over what effect I'm using. And
oh geez. Wow.
Yeah, but it's been a good time. Like experimenting with figuring out how to make something that, for me, it's like I often talk about thinking with my composer brain and my performer brain and making them work together to make an interface that I can use on the fly has been a really interesting challenge for sure.
Yeah. It is like a total learning curve. And any new console you get to, I've found, at least guitar multi-effect consoles, it's like a whole learning curve just to be able to sound good. Even though you've already learned how to play the guitar, you need to learn all these other things.
Makes me happy that I play an instrument where there's not huge variations even between flute, piccolo, alto, flute. It's the same fingering, so I'm good. It's good.
You don't need a distortion pedal or anything.
No, they do have some like flute distortion effects that are coming out, and they're so cool. I don't have the budget for a flute distorter yet.
That's fair.
They're fun though, and I hopefully we'll get a chance to kind of play around with some in the future, because I don't know, I think it's so much fun, and what I've had to do kind of through brute forcing it and hooking it up to Max, I've really had fun with. And
nice.
It's great.
It sounds like it could be a really cool like texture, and yeah.
So also, I know that the idea of a capo is very divisive to people, and I am wondering what your thoughts are on like using capos, and what contexts are they good? Are there any contexts when they're not as helpful, or not, or like cheating, or whatever that might look like? Yeah, thoughts?
Right. Yeah. So I just to I gather you know what a capo is if you're delving into the world of writing for the guitar.
Yes, and if you've made it this far in the podcast, probably you know what a capo is.
That's a good point. So I've heard the argument, right, that it's like transposing for idiots or whatever. It's like you only use a capo if you don't know how to transpose, or you don't know how to play bar chords, which is, I would argue that, one, if someone doesn't yet know how to play bar chords, or doesn't yet want to transpose, then why can't they just use a capo? Why do we have to why does anyone have to be upset about that? It's fine. Yeah. It makes music more accessible for beginners. And sometimes or if you're somebody who just kind of wants to accompany themselves with open chords, and you're a singer and you want to move a song up a step or two, it's something you can do really super easily. And you can keep playing the same chord shapes that you know and love. Yeah. But you can also speaking back to sort of the using open strings and voicings in sort of acoustic guitar arrangements. I used to do acoustic cover duo gigs with a singer friend of mine, and I made it a point to get a little more complex musically than maybe any other person that would have been playing at that same bar any other night of the week. just because I wanted to keep myself entertained.
Yeah.
And say if you have a song that like is in B flat or whatever, you can capo up a minor third, capo at the 3rd fret, and then use like G shapes all up and down the neck, even if it's, whether it's just an open G chord, which is gonna, in my opinion, if you're playing like an acoustic gig, open chords are gonna sound better like than a B bar chord, because it's just a lusher sound. But then you can take advantage of voicings all up and down the neck, and you have those open strings that sit in the key you're using.
Yeah.
And I would argue that when you're doing something like that, you're actually thinking like a couple levels deeper transposition-wise. So it's not an easy way out, because you actually kind of have to think even harder. You're like, oh, these voicings up top, higher up, that I'm used to using open string whatever voicings in. Okay, now I got to take that 3 frets up because I'm transposing. I think it's a really valid way to expand the possibilities on the instrument, and it's not like an easy way out or a cheat or anything like that.
I know for me, when I'm like writing, I've stayed away from capo because of the extra thought that I would have to put in. It's kind of like, I thought about it and then I went like, no, what? I can't, my brain's broken. I have to go back to, I'll change the key if I need to, but it was so much to try and think about, especially because like I don't play the instrument. I never have. I tried it one time and I was like, no. It doesn't work.
Oh no.
My fingers don't move like that. Thank you for the thought. But like, no, it was just like, it was so mind bending. And it was like, the fact that people find this to be like too easy, like, just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. And speaking of like using a capo and then not knowing like which way is up anymore because things get so confusing. There's a part in the musical Head Over Heels in the song Vacation. It's in the second guitar book, and I think because the song's in F and the first guitar book is playing this part that has these beautiful open strings involved, and it works really well in E major. So you capo 1, and now you're getting all of those open strings that wouldn't be open in F, but now you can play them open. So they just also wrote the second guitar part capo 1 because maybe they just like opened the finale file with all the pre-existing. I don't know why. Yeah. But the part is up at like the 12th fret. So the 13th fret. And every single note is fretted. So if you're getting into a situation where you're not using any open strings and you're playing way up in the stratosphere, it's not helpful at that point to say something's capoed and like you're writing it not in concert pitch anymore. Like it's written in E major and it has to sound in F major and you're playing at the 13th fret. I could not wrap my head around it. And I maintain it's because they did it wrong, not because I'm inept. But yeah, there are some ways to do it wrong. Too much thinking sometimes.
That's wow. So if you're writing it out, like for reading the music, are you still reading? What are you reading the sounding pitches, or does it change?
So this particular instance, well, no. So you would read. Well, that's a good question. Typically, I'd say you'd read, like the transposed.
Okay,
whatever.
So you're reading like the finger positions relative to the capo being the top of the neck.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
But in something like in Spring Awakening, there are instances where you're capoed, at least in Bitch of Living, this is the case, you're capoed in like sort of an open F sus or something, and it's written concert. But I think at that point it almost doesn't matter because you're just looking at the shapes. Like, I don't know what notes my fingers are playing at that point because, like, any touch point of what I know of the guitar has been removed from the equation because there's different tuning, there's a capo. Like, just tell me where to put my fingers at
depersonalization. Like, follow those instructions and it'll come out right. Gotcha.
Precisely. Yeah.
Way more work on the composer's part, but much easier on the player.
Right.
Which is Which is kind of what we're here for, honestly. Like, as a composer, I feel like an obligation to do all of the heavy lifting that I can to make it as easy as, not necessarily as easy as possible, but as easy as possible for the music that I want to make. Like, yeah, like maybe I do write hard music. I'm trying to work on that. I want to make more accessible music so that more people can play it and more people can hear it and say, ooh, that's cool. I want to get that sheet music and try it. But at the same time, like, hard music doesn't need to be exorbitantly hard, nor does it need to be hard for the sake of being hard. I hate when that, I have a lot of thoughts on the difficulty of music.
No, I feel that. I mean, and if you do, the heavy lifting and you put everything on the page as plainly and as easy to understand as possible, it's more likely that the person is going to play what you intended in the first place.
Exactly.
Like, it's easier for them to do the thing right and beautifully, and I identify with that a lot.
There's definitely no reason to make it more complicated than it needs to be. Like, I don't get it.
Exactly.
Part of it is just I got a score from. I've got a lot of summer festivals coming up, so I've had a lot of scores thrown my way. Some of them I'm composing, some of them I'm playing, and I just got a score from somebody, one of the many composers I'm working with, and I looked at it and went, there's absolutely no way that I'm going to get this ready in time. And then by the time I had like gone through the front matter and decoded everything that meant everything else, there's a lot of pieces that I'm working with right now that have crazy note shape or like note head shapes that mean different things. But like this one in particular, I looked at it and my brain went, not going to be able to play this in time. We'll have to work with the composer. And then when I like spent about an hour figuring out what everything meant, I was like, oh, this actually isn't hard. It could have been written in a way that made it so that when I opened the score, I went, ooh, fun, rather than, oh no.
Yeah. There was an instance, I played the musical A Little Princess, which is not a musical anyone's heard of, not a musical anyone needs to necessarily hear of, but there's a song where there's this like syncopated part, and it's mixed meter, and it should be mixed meter, but the meters that they chose to put in the orders that they chose them made no sense at all. Not a single pulse fell on a downbeat. And I rewrote it, and I was like, hey, band, if you want to understand what you're playing, these are the groupings of, quarters that should be in this particular order so that the beats fall on beats and not the end of 4 tied into the next one with I don't know why some of that stuff makes it out onto the page. Who's going to be able to decode things that makes no sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's sometimes like we were my orchestra played this we were doing like movie music concert, which it was fine. We don't need to get into that. It was fine at best. But one of the things we were doing was a Chicago medley. And They Both Reached for the Gun, the bump, 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 ba-da, 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 ba-da. All of the wind players in the orchestra were like, oh yeah. Because we looked at it, went, that looks harder than it needs to be. And then heard the music and played it like we were all playing in pep band, which most of us did. And so like the pep band charts often look really complicated in the score or in the part.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, well, just, play it how it goes. Like, don't worry about it. And then the strings, on the other hand, who did not have a pep band, because who has strings in their pep band, had to spend like a really long sectional, like when he and into it, and it was like, no, just play it.
Right.
Like you just got a groove. I don't know what to tell you other than feel it and do it. And so there's definitely something to be said for like getting more experience as a player in that way. I was super happy that I didn't have to be in a really long sectional to count that out, because it looked horrible. But like at a certain point, just figure it out.
Yeah.
And trade secret, if the composer is going to be able to hear the difference between coming in on the like 4th note of a 10 tuplet versus the 3rd, like good for them.
Oh God.
I wouldn't be able to. Right. If I'm writing anything that's that rhythmically complex, it's either I'm trying very hard to like transcribe something with extreme accuracy, but at the same time it's kind of just a feel it moment, or there's like some sort of mathematical operation that went on in the composition where there was like indeterminacy, or I'm using structure in like a, I don't know, like not necessarily a Schoenberg way, but like I'm using some kind of a structure or a predetermined set, and like this is how it has to be. But I'm not gonna know if you're not playing it exactly on the third note of the 10 tup. Like what? Yeah. No, give it your best go.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
It's very silly.
Yeah. It's what even is music,
Right. It's like, it sounds good when my Sibelius plays it the way I wrote it out. It's like, yeah, but Sibelius is a computer.
Yeah. If you want to write computer music, please feel free to do so.
Right.
That's great. It's one of the great thing about computer music is it's the same all the time.
Same. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one of my good friends in undergrad, his senior recital, I was so envious because he wrote all electronic music. And his senior recital, he got up, he introduced the concert, he hit play, and we watched it.
Oh,
and I was like, that would have been so much less stress than what I did for my recital, where it was like, I'm up there conducting, I'm up there performing. Things can go wrong at any time. But I was like, wow, he really looked at he got to watch his whole senior recital exactly as it was going to be, because it was electronic. And
wow.
I was jealous. I was like, ooh, I should write.
I know, right? Music. Like, everyone should have thought of that. That would have been way less stressful than my senior recital. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I was like, this is genius. This is absolutely incredible. And it was also an incredible recital. It should be noted. Like, there's amazing music. And like, he's now working in like media, video game, TV music. And a lot of it is that same style of stuff. It's very, very cool. I'm like, I should have done that. I should have done that. I would have been so much less stressed.
It's the same every time.
Yeah. The consistency. Not that I don't love working with performers, but there's something really magical about a computer that just does it exactly the same way.
Yeah. Right. All the preparation in the world, and then you still got to get to the gig and physically play it.
Though talking about heavy lifting, I have to like encode expression because there's nobody else bringing life to it. So it's a double-edged sword for sure, but
that's fair.
And wow, encoding and expression that's a lot.
Yeah, I can't say I have any idea how to do that. It sounds impressive.
Yeah, I don't really have any idea how to do anything I'm doing, but
that's fair. Which
kind of brings me to the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is, what has your experience been with imposter syndrome, and how do you manage that? Because that's definitely something I struggle with a lot.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a loaded question, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think it's probably something a lot of folks struggle with, right? Especially, especially artists, especially musicians, especially like queer people, and like female, trans, non-binary folks in what is like all worlds, a kind of a male-dominated world.
Yeah.
I find that in musical theater in particular, and also in like the cover band original scene, it is so easy to compare yourself to anybody else, because it's like there's one seat of the thing, and if someone else got the gig, it means you didn't get the gig.
Yeah.
And if like, if you're seeing a band on stage and there's like a guitarist like ripping a solo or something, I immediately think in my head, like, clearly I can't do that because I am standing here and they are standing there doing that. Yeah. And it sounds fast and it sounds high and it sounds all of these things, and I don't know if I could do that, and I'm not doing it right now, so clearly this person is better than me in every possible way.
Yeah.
And even like when I do get a gig that requires me to do something like that, having like the sort of thought that like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. That's such a challenging thing. Oh my gosh. And then of course you practice it for the amount of time that it needs you to practice it, and you get it where it needs to be, and then you can do it. But but even when you're up, in the middle of working on that gig, and you're on top of it, and you're playing well and all these things, you can see someone doing some other gig in some other style, and you'd be like, oh, I'm not doing that right now. That person's so much better than me.
Yeah.
So it's a real thing, and I think it's, at least for me, it's compounded by this idea that, like, when you see a band on stage, we're so used to seeing a group of dudes playing instruments, and then like a woman singing, or maybe playing piano, because that's all that women can do, because that's just science,
it's
right?
Delicate and feminine.
And like, maybe if she also wants to play the flute, we can allow that. But that's pretty much it. And so we see the group of dudes on stage, and we just take for granted that they are qualified and capable and deserving of this platform they've been given.
Yeah.
And because we've seen that forever, we as women and trans and non-binary folks it's like baked into us that we are less qualified and capable and deserving of that same platform.
Yeah.
And even when we are given that platform, like, it should be going to someone else, where we shouldn't actually be there, and trusted to do the thing that we've been trusted to do, even though it's something that we love and, you know, devote all of our time to and may be very, very experienced at.
Right.
So that's all, like, so intertwined and intersectional and, like, you know, baked into all of those feelings. For me, coping-wise, a couple things. One is, as cliche as it is, I try to remind myself that everybody has their strengths, right? Like, in the guitar world, at least, there's so many different styles that you can play.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can be really, really good at one particular niche style. Or you can be really good, or at least serviceable at a wide variety of them. And in all likelihood, like, if you get asked to do a gig and you think it's within your wheelhouse, even if you have to work up to it and you have the time to do so, by the time you're going to be doing it, you're going to have prepared yourself well enough to do it. So
it'll be fine. Right. Yeah.
You get there, and, you know, everyone's got their stuff. Everyone's got what they're good at. Everyone's got what they're not good at. And a lot of times you can get good enough at the thing to, like, not make a fool of yourself.
Yeah.
Which is the catastrophizing, like, idea that I'm going to do this thing and fail miserably at it, and then everyone's going to find out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's that. And then
get that.
Another really awesome thing that I've discovered, I don't know if you're familiar with the group organization, something, Maestra.
Not.
I think maybe they're kind of, like, specifically for musical theater musicians, but I mean, I think it's all the same in the music world, right?
Like, it's, especially in today's world, like, what is that line? It's kind of meaningless, especially if you look at, like, musical theater and opera. That's a whole other conversation, but, like, it's kind of the same thing. Yeah. Like, but...
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, and especially from a musician standpoint, like, we're doing all sorts of gigs. We're just trying to build a career of making music. It doesn't have to be a musical, like, every night.
I'll do what you ask. Yeah.
Yeah. And even the actors, like, they're going out and doing, like, a one night of, like, a cabaret of pop tunes or whatever. Like, they're singers too, whatever. But yeah, so Maestra is this organization for female, trans, and non-binary musical theater musicians, but it's like, you know, musicians, composers, like, music directors, lyricists, like, any musical type discipline you could have within theater, but I don't know, whatever. And so it's like this website. You can there's like a directory of musicians, so you can, like, put together a profile of, like, you know, a blurb about yourself, whatever instruments you play, like, your pronouns, and, like, I think they only let you host one video at a time, but you can put, like, a reel up there too, a video reel. Yeah. And yeah, I've made, like, a lot of connections through that group, and have had a lot of work come my way through that directory, and it's like, really, not only is it gratifying to just have, like, community and feel like I'm, like, kind of seen and sharing space with people of similar gender, and just similar like life experience. But also it's sort of like a little bit of a like you to mainstream society of being like, haha, now we have this extra special thing that like usually only white men have, and now we have this special thing just for us. It's a really cool, and they also do like master classes and all sorts of resources, and the return on investment of that profile has been nice.
Yeah, I know, like, I'm currently doing a summer festival, and I kind of had the realization that, this is sort of the first time since I did the same festival last year that I've, like, heard other people's compositions and heard other people playing new music, because, like, with everything being online, there wasn't a lot of that collaborative nature. Even as I, like, did the first year of my master's, we didn't collaborate really. It was a lot of making music by myself, and I wrote a lot, and I'm happy with it, and I'm really liking what I'm writing. However, now going back into a space where suddenly I'm interfacing with a ton of very talented people, like, I was sort of like, whoa. And the imposter syndrome hit in a way that it's never hit before. I was like, I've lived in my own music for a year, and now I hear other music happening, and it's wow, it's been a lot. But at the same time, like, the community is really, really strong. And I, like, have a decent musical community outside of these, like, festivals that I do, even as they are very strong community. And that's been the thing that I've sort of leaned back on, is that these are people that, the one thing that I kind of told myself, especially with this one, is, like, even if I faked my way into this really cool space with a lot of really cool people, I'm in a really cool space with a lot of really cool people, and they don't seem to mind that I'm here. So even if I snuck in through the back door, let's make the most of it while I'm here. And that's honestly helped really a lot, is the kind of, so what if I did, like, why who says that I don't belong here? But even if I don't, no one's figuring it out, so let's go. Like, it's good. It's really, I don't know, that kind of just like, yeah, and what of it kind of attitude has really kind of helped me quite a bit, I would say.
I feel like that's like, it sounds like verbatim that's something that my therapist has told me, right? And like, I'm sure she would love if I could actually say that to myself, like, with a straight face and believe it, right? It's like, so I mean,
I probably don't believe it, but like, at least saying it feels good.
It's like, they haven't found out, but they will, and they should.
But make the most while you're there. Whatever. If you have to leave in secret agent fashion, so be it.
Yeah, I've been like meditating too, doing like mindfulness meditation, and it's not something I ever thought I would do, but I started seeing a therapist right before the pandemic hit, which was incredibly convenient.
Yeah, good timing.
Yeah, because I mean, if I hadn't, like, the last year and a half would have probably been a completely different experience. But yeah, that was like one of the things that she suggested is this like mindfulness practice, and it's been really great. It's been really helpful. So that kind of like tries to. It sort of helps to cut into the like distortion thoughts, right? Of like, I don't belong here, I don't whatever. Yeah.
And that I definitely have had a similar experience. One really wonderful thing about this festival is every morning we start out with a half an hour of deep listening, like by Pauline Oliveros, and they're all doing, they're all certified in deep listening, and we like get together and we just like move and we make noise and we hear each other and we respond to each other. And that's been the most meaningful music, or meaningful, well, all sound is music according to this practice, and I love that thought. And so it's been the most meaningful music that I feel like I make on a day-to-day basis, and it's every morning. And it's a really nice way to start the day. It's kind of centers me both in terms of like where I'm at mentally, in the same way that a normal meditation would. And then it also centers me in a musical way because I'm so attuned to the sounds. And so, I don't know, everybody try deep listening. It's the best.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We love deep listening. It's live streamed every morning. Join our deep listening practice. It's been a lifesaver, honestly.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us here at Classical Schmassical. If you at home enjoyed the show, there's plenty more where that came from, so make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Is there anything that you want to plug as we're wrapping up?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In the middle of July, I'm doing my first gig at Papermill, which kind of feels like a little big deal, a little
Amazing.
small big deal.
Yeah.
It's a one-woman show, Judy Garland Tribute, called Get Happy.
So cool.
It's going to be really, really fun. Playing drum set for that. I know there's going to be a piano and possibly another instrument involved.
Nice.
In their like outdoor theater.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be a boatload of fun. It's I want to say the 14th to the like Wednesday to Saturday, whatever that week is.
Yeah.
14, 15, 16,
Nice.
17, something. And then earlier, the prior weekend in July, I'm working with my friend Michelle Foster on her one-woman Carole King tribute show. It's called Sweet Seasons. That's
Nice.
happening down in Haddonfield, New Jersey. And that's going to be a bunch of fun, too. Just like music that Carole King performed, music that she wrote that was made famous by other people, and just everything in between. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you would like to continue the conversation on guitar or gear or imposter syndrome, certainly join the Discord, link in the description. Feel free to visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/classical schmassical. That's schmassical, SCHMASSICAL. And remember, as always, stay classy and questionably classical.